It's Carrie Liam.
Thank you, Carrie.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Okay. Do we have anyone here for public comment for an item not on the agenda? All right. Hearing none, we'll go on to item 4 on our agenda, which is the approval of the minutes. In your packet is the meeting minutes from April 18th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Tim?
Tim is the first, okay. And a second, Alice. Okay, any discussion about the minutes?
Since I wasn't here, I always forget. I have to abstain?
I think you can abstain. Yeah, that's fine. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes? Alice and Tom and Tim and myself, and John is abstaining because he wasn't here. All right, we are going to move on to item 5, new business. 5.1 is the BUUSD policy index review. Noted in there, it's a great way to keep track of the coming and goings of policies going to the board and the dates by which those are going, and dates of first read, second read, etc. And I'll just let folks know at the last board meeting last Thursday, all of the 4 policies that were on for the second read all passed. So that was F20, C1, C7, and C8. So those are all passed into and will be uploaded to our policy website. Any other comments on the BUUSD policy index review? Okay. 5.2 is the BFBA policy index review, similar to the BUUSD, but from the Vermont School Board Association. Any notes or comments there from anyone?
Can I ask where the materials are? All I found was an agenda. I don't see what you're looking at. Can you share a screen or?
Yeah, Chris, can you? So where you found the agenda, that's usually where the packet is. It's connected.
Carrie, it's right on the website. You should be able to.
I see. It must be following the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for asking. All right. Hearing nothing further on that, we are going to go on to 5.3, which is policy A20, board meetings, agenda prep, and distribution. And this is a policy that currently is in existence in the BUUSD, and it is on tonight because we were looking at whether we should add our C building to the rotation of the locations of the board meetings. And I think, Chris, were you going to look into that about whether that was doable in their space or concerns that there were?
Yeah, it would certainly be doable. We have some tech stuff to work out for the using the meeting owl, but certainly not that it would prohibit us from being able to start this. I would assume this would be for next year. I also had a question, Chris, about the meeting start time as well, given that it says 5:30.
Oh, in the policy?
Yes.
Oh yeah, you're right.
I see Josh has a hand up. Josh Howard.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, as far as rotating the buildings for meetings, I'm struggling to kind of figure out what the purpose of that is. It seems there's more confusion as for the public wants to attend and stuff. I know a few people got to the wrong place a couple of times, including myself. And I was wondering if we could just set up a one location for the meetings, like say it's Spalding because it's centrally located, everyone feeds into it, and just be done with it. So everyone knows that hey, every Monday and every Thursday there's a meeting, 6 o'clock at Spalding, and no one can have that confusion anymore.
Thanks for your comment, Tim Bolton.
Yeah, I was just going to add some light on that. At one time, Josh, meetings were really open and public, and we actually had chit chat and discussion of topics. And there was always an opportunity for building leaders and principals to actually make presentations or, want to highlight something about their buildings and be really proud of them. But now that we've kind of put the kibosh on any kind of public information as much as we can, we just don't do that anymore.
If I can just add, actually, the goal is to make one of the main reasons we do want to have the rotation is that we do want to reinstitute having student, teacher, or principal presentations right at the beginning of the meetings. The idea being that the host principal could be present for the beginning of the meeting at least, possibly having some kiddos do a presentation. So that was the thinking behind it. And I think if we can have it very clear as it is in this policy here, when these things happen, for example, when we come back to school in September, those two meetings would be in the Barre City Library, and we'd have Mrs. Waterhouse and Mr. Laflamme there, possibly with a teacher. I don't know. We still have stuff to work out, but that's the reasoning behind it. And why it was put in place in the first place.
I will say, Josh, all of the committee meetings are here in the Spalding Library, so that doesn't change. That's a constant for all the committees. And also on the agendas where you get the packet and everything, it does say right on the agenda page the in-person location of every meeting. So I have actually looked to that myself for a few of the board meetings to make sure I was going to the right place. But that is on every agenda as well. Tim, is your hand raised from previously? Thanks. And Josh, go ahead.
It's nice. I do like the idea of having building administrators speak up and stuff like that. It's something we haven't seen in quite some time. Actually, I don't think I've seen much principal at any of these meetings for a very long time. I think that if we're going to end up trying to make that work, as far as having students speak and stuff like that, we might want to talk about pushing the board meeting start time a little bit later, because I know after school activities tend to take up until usually about 6 o'clock. I know for elementary school kids and for middle school kids, it's the same. Usually they don't get done to like 5:30 at the earliest, and they got to go home and they got to go somewhere if they're going to do a presentation. So that should be part of the discussion as well, as far as maybe 6:30 for a start time.
So the policy will go to the board for first and second reading. If we're going to look at adding the C building, and in this policy currently it says meetings start at 5:30, which currently they start at 6. So there will be a first and second reading for the board to make that decision. And you can certainly either you can make that comment at a board meeting, or we can represent that point of view as well. Other committee members, any feedback about adding the C building, wanting to do that, or? Yeah, go ahead.
I just say I can appreciate the how it could be confusing. You know, people won't check; they assume that they go. I'm just saying I can understand the concern.
Yeah,
I'm sure everybody can.
Sure.
So
yeah,
I don't know if this is just being tried, this rotation, and is there any experience with a lot of people saying I went to the wrong place? I don't think that's happened yet.
Yeah, Alice, your historical perspective.
Prior to the consolidation under Act 26, each board met at its respective school. There was an overarching group called the Supervisory Union, and that board met at the various places throughout the district. That was representatives of each of the smaller boards on that.
In a rotation.
In a rotation, yes. And then when we were consolidated, we went to this rotation for any number of reasons. First for presentations, second for the potential of individuals who aren't on the facilities committee to actually see the building, see the work that's being done, see the students' work that's displayed, that type of thing, and share it among the entire board. So it really is valuable to have that rotation in place for any number of reasons.
Yep. Thank you, Alex. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just really saw the 5:30 remark in the policy there. So I have a question is, so we went to 6 o'clock. That was part of reorganization. The board voted on a 6 o'clock start. And I'm wondering where this 5:30 is coming from all of a sudden. We barely started trying to 6 o'clock. I kind of enjoy it a little bit better because I actually get home in time. And so why are we pushing for 5:30 all of a sudden?
We're not pushing for 5:30. This policy that's in the packet is from the 2019 adoption of this policy. So Chris has noted that that's an error, and we will change that before it goes to the board for the first and second reading to make the change of that, and also the addition of C if that's what we decide to do. So it's not anything of the sort. And the dates of the adoption in 2019 are just right there at the top of the packet. So this came right off the website of the current 820 that we have in place.
It just needs to be updated.
Yes, it needs to be updated. All right. Any further discussion? All right. Anyone want to make a motion?
I so moved that we refer this to the board for a first reading.
Okay.
Policy 820.
Okay. And anybody want to second it?
Second, Julian.
But I had a question, but if we're referring it, don't we need to make the change from 5:30 to 6 o'clock? And are we adding the other building?
So we'll definitely change it from 5:30 to 6. Alex, are you making the motion to add?
Yes,
C
that's
building?
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need to make a proposal of which month we think that should be, or leave that up to the board?
I think
to
that
decide?
we leave that up to the board. Yeah.
Okay.
And we
So
can,
want to add it?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Well, normally if you were going to do this, you would have had, John is correct, you would have had a draft version that you presented to the committee that shows the new schedule of what the buildings are and the new time, because the committee has always approved amended versions in their amended form, with the underlines and strikeouts so that they know exactly what's going to be presented to the board. So I don't know if you want to have it amended and come back to policy, or you're going to have the board make the decision on when, where the meeting should be, the schedule for rotation.
And can we accomplish this tonight by just changing the 5:30 to 6? And we could have one, either a master copy. And if this seat with the other building put in would just be maybe 4th month, right?
Right. So I mean, 12 months, 3 buildings previously. We have an even number of Berrytown, Berry City, and Spalding. So we would just need to make one of the buildings just 3 times instead of 4.
correct.
We come back to this and have the vote on the once we have a amended version. Sounds like we can have that shortly.
Yeah, I suppose we could do that. Well, I'd love to just put it to the board with the easy amendment, but
Well, no, I mean,
definitely
come back
could
to it
do
like
that.
later tonight.
Oh,
Or what? Because I think superintendent's making some edits right now.
It's simply dividing it by 4 instead of 3. It's very, very simple.
Yeah.
Strike out of the 5:30
Yep.
to 6. So we'll have an amended copy here.
okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, my only question is, when this goes to the board, does it go to the board with the corrections on it so they can see what's been changed?
Yes, it
Yes.
does.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so we have a motion on the table to send it to the board with the change from 5:30 to 6 and adding the C building as a 4th building in the rotation. Alice, is that fine for your motion?
That's fine.
Yeah, and I think Juliana, were you the second on that?
Yes.
Is that fine for your motion?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor signify with a thumbs up or an eye. Alice, Tom, John,
We'll have this
Tim.
amended to share. That'd be great.
Giuliano,
Aye.
and me. Okay, thank you. Andrea?
So there is a phone number ending 54. I'm not sure who that is. And the other thing, just to give you a heads up, I had been trying to get into the meeting using my non-Google account since 10 of 6. And finally, I tried going through my Google account, and that's how I got let in. So I think we have an issue again, because when I didn't use my Google account, it just spun and spun and spun and said, well, someone will let you in, but nothing ever happened.
Okay, that could be a Google Meet issue. I don't know why that's happening. Our tech guys said that was remedied, but I will certainly check. Sorry you had to deal with that, Andrew.
And the 54 and number ending in 54 is Andy McMichael. All right, we are going to move on to 5.4, which is policy C14. It's a required policy on section 504, an ADA grievance protocol for students and staff. This is a new VSBA policy. We don't currently have this in our policy library. So the VSBA version of the policy is in your packet. And along with a section 504 grievance form that is currently in existence within the BUUSD. And so one of the things we want to look at tonight, and Luke, maybe you can speak to this, is whether that is the most current, the only version of that form, if it's the one we still want to use, if it meets all the needs, etc.
Yeah, so the grievance form is the one that's out of our packet currently, but that needs to be, there's a couple criteria that are not specified on the form. So for example, on page 2 of the grievance policy, it asks for the date of the incident or action giving rise, and that's not specifically requested or outlined on the grievance form.
Okay.
The type of discrimination is not on there, but the rest of the components are. So it just needs to be tweaked to add those 2 things to it.
Okay. And then the other thing that was it Tina? Yeah, that Tina and I had emailed a little bit about was we don't want the policy to have the names of the current coordinators, because every time someone might change a job, we have to change the policy. So we want to make sure that the procedures that go along with this policy would be updated and current to reflect. So we make sure that we're making sure that I just said the same thing twice in a row. So we are making sure that it's easy to contact people, and we're not putting any barriers in place to reach out for people to file a complaint.
And yes, and the district procedures manual does have a page which outlines the contacts for each building,
Okay.
and that's updated over the summer. So it's available annually, updated at the start of the school year.
Okay.
I have a question.
Please, Alice.
Under the complaint shall be in writing and signed by the grievant and include, that's that list of inclusions.
Mhm.
The type of discrimination alleged to have occurred. How would people know what that is? Because some things are a type of discrimination, some things are not. So if people are writing down something that they believe to be discrimination, but it doesn't meet the standard, so do we have some kind of a descriptor that can go with that?
Like categories,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Good
even
question.
eliminate that. I don't know if that's a requirement to be for the type of discrimination. It seems to reader of the complaint is to glean something from the facts and to require somebody to pick up pigeonhole, of discrimination without a list. It might be a number of things. Somebody may have a complaint about a number of just what they think is discrimination. If they just describe the facts, I don't know why.
Correct.
The administrator that's looking at the complaint can't, maybe categorize it. It needs to be categorized. I'm not sure why it isn't.
Right. Well, I'm concerned that the type of discrimination is misleading because Section 504 is disability.
Yeah.
So
Right.
the
That's
type is not, it's racial, it's gender. No, the type is how was the discrimination carried through. So it's not necessarily the type of discrimination, it's what was the action that was discriminatory.
Okay.
Like not allowing someone to go on a field trip, for example, or, restricting them from something.
Now put yourself in the place of a person who is not familiar. with
Yeah, I
that.
don't like this.
Yeah.
No, I'm not defending it.
That
I
was
think-
my thought,
Yeah.
just, Joe average man off the street reading this, would they be discouraged from filing a complaint because they don't understand what it is that they need to do?
And maybe there's reason in the other forum that didn't have that. Give me the facts. Yeah.
Right.
Like that.
I think the form responds to that. I think we need to remember this is the language from the BSBA, and I think we decided in one of our last meetings we're going to try to stick as close to this as possible. But
I guess my question is, given that the legality of this policy
Right.
and the laws that are referenced in the footnotes, could we conclude that that's part of the law and we should not take that?
the assumption is that it was vetted properly by BSBA.
Right.
Though I'm not going to disagree with that.
Is it
Yeah,
tricky?
it's not ideal
Yeah.
for sure, but
So how on our form then can we make that clear? If the form is what the person of the complainant is going to be using, how can we clarify that on our form?
I'm still not sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know how to go.
I mean, is the question on the form the summary of the grievance? Does that get at that? Like, would someone writing it say, my kid wasn't allowed to go on a
Yeah,
field trip,
yeah.
or accommodations were not
Yeah.
made for bathroom use based on my kid's medical?
and we certainly wouldn't
Restrictions like that.
disregard the complaint if they didn't check off each of those 5 bullets in the policy. I mean, we'd still take seriously the complaint. So
If we have a summary of the grievance.
Yeah.
Does that cover type of discrimination, or do we
and we
legally
can
need to be
certainly
more?
certainly
specific?
questions could be asked about that too, for clarity if they were
Right.
necessary. Juliana, you have your hand up.
So are there cases where someone would actually come down and fill out this form with an administrator? Or is it normally done and then sent to the appropriate person?
I was talking to Stacy Anderson about this, and the frequency of this is very, very rare. At least in recent years. I mean, I don't know, Luke, if you have. Yeah.
I've never
Yeah,
received one
yeah.
of these.
Typically through the 504 planning process, you can resolve these things. This is in place if through that process, no resolution has been met.
Okay, yeah, I just assumed that because of the 504 that, there's a close following, and that if there were any issues that this would be filled out with an administrator or with the person. So that's fine.
And with the with the child's team as well, to make sure everything has been looked at properly.
I wonder if the form could be amended to say, type of discrimination alleged to have occurred / summary of the grievance. So then that is giving people a prompt that we're looking for some information about what the specific situation was.
I just think that wording is really misleading. The word type.
Mhm.
I just think that it's very like context dependent.
Yeah.
I think this form is written is great.
Well, thanks. So,
I didn't even know that. But it addresses the main issues of what's the matter at hand here.
well, I also think the way the form is written, it was intentionally written so that it would be accessible and not
Yep.
in like legalese
Exactly.
language that you have to
Exactly.
know.
It's more
this whole
it's more
30-page
procedural. It's
packet.
more procedural.
So, I'm comfortable with the form, and we could give examples. I mean, we could say exclusionary or what, like, we could use more 10-cent words,
Yeah.
or we could make it accessible. And it really is up to the administrator or whoever's receiving this to then, this is just the referral. I'm filing a grievance because I don't like the way something was done. And then that initiates next steps, which are conversations, investigations. What do you mean by this? Getting clarity. So it's really just a first step. This is not meant to be a
Summary, you're not asking for the point by point detail.
Right.
Just understanding, then you figure out later if there was discrimination or not, based on what they say. But yeah, you're not asking because it seems like you'd be asking people to know every point.
correct. Right.
They might not understand it at this level.
All right, so are we saying that then what really needs to be added to the form is just the date of the incident or action giving rise to the complaint? That's the only thing that's not on the form that we feel needs to be added?
It's date to the form.
Yeah, I can easily add, what are the facts, what was the date? I mean, I can add a date.
Yeah.
On there. That would not be a problem.
You can say date or dates because it might be
Right. Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
one.
Isn't the fact already there?
It is. I was just saying add date to that.
Oh,
Yeah.
And differentiate it from date of signature and date of occurrence.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Okay, so the only change I'm hearing that needs to happen is adding that date piece to the form. And other than that, are we feeling like this would go to the board for a first reading? Andrea?
The VSBA policy does say that the policy is supposed to include the coordinator's contact information.
Yes, we did see that previously, and what we thought was that wasn't great if it's referring to the procedures and the contact information. Then that would prevent us having to update the policy if someone changed their job. Carrie?
What if you just put the SU phone number in the position so they could call that number? They at least have a phone number to call and ask for that position.
Do we mean on the form itself?
Within the policy, there's a bracketed
Yeah.
section. One says include building 504 coordinator contact info, and then the other ones
I think that can be done without adding their name.
insert HR director contact information. That's another one.
I was just concerned that that might be a legal requirement because VSBA did put it in the policy that we have some sort of contact information so that if someone reads the policy, they can have an address, phone number, or something, or email address, or some way to know how to file their complaint.
I would suggest we have that. I think we can address that in a general sense with the contact, as Kerry suggested.
Yes.
Are the 504 building 504 coordinators generally a particular position in the school? Or assistant
No.
principal?
Not necessarily.
It could just be any.
Well, you're right. We want to have somebody who is most likely to be above the investigative fray for this stuff. So
So if we want, given that we need to add just the general HR
Yeah.
SU information, we could add the 504 coordinator general information without people's names. We could have that come back to committee with those additions before it goes to the board. We want to do that.
Okay.
Do you want to, we need to make a motion or no? That just.
Could you also, could we also just, instead of see the list at the end of this document, could you just say see the list in the procedures? Which is under step 2, it's in the parentheses, for contact information, so then that would be more specific to the school year, because that would be updated.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could go either way. I mean, part of what was taken out and what's in the packet tonight was that we didn't want to have name specific, so we were talking about just having it be part of the procedures. Andrea?
Just an FYI, Sonia's not being picked up by the microphone. I couldn't really tell what she's saying.
Oh, Sonia, yeah, we only have one owl here, so we'll come up here.
Thanks.
Policy C10, which is HHB, also requires listing who the person is, and I don't recall if that's written into the policy or if that is in the procedures.
What number is it?
C10. Because I believe that has very similar language about these are the contact people, identified personnel in buildings.
All right, I'll open it up and see what it is.
And so however we tackle that, maybe we just duplicate it.
That policy has an appendix A that says designated employees, and then it does name Chris Hennessy, but it says interim superintendent, so you see how quickly things have to be updated. when we put
Exactly.
actual names. And then it says for Berry City, Pierre and Kristen Morrison. And for Berry Town, it says Theodore Mills, Jacqueline Bora, and Alice Harding. So, and then there's names for CVCC and Spalding. Spalding has you, Luke, and Brenda.
So a follow-up question to that, are appendices part of the policy, or can those be amended without board action?
Going to the board.
Because if that's the case, then the procedure can be appendix C,
Yeah,
and this
This-
is where they are.
the C10 does, has the 2019 dates for being first and second reading, and then it does say designees revised 6/24/21. So some updating did happen last year, so using that notation.
I think they have to be updated, identified, and they have to be identified and shared annually,
Mhm.
which is just one more thing for the board to do, but I don't know. I don't know if that's required.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't change the first and second reading dates,
Right.
certainly, so.
Right.
Andrea and then Pierre?
I don't recall exactly, but it may be, I know some of these, they have to designate people every year. And I'm thinking, but I can't swear to it, that adding the names or if the names changed was not considered a substantive change. So the policies didn't have to go back to the board to be approved, and just the information, the names were changed in the policy.
Yeah,
Does
thank
that
you.
make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that, this line of designees revised, that's what I thought it was probably just referring to.
And I have to do that every year for reporting to the state too,
Yeah.
about all the different roles and
Yeah.
And I believe truant officer
all of
has
those,
to be
all of that
identified
stuff.
annually and then reported to the town clerk.
Yeah.
which is
So
interesting.
if we wanted to
Interesting.
say, similar, maybe we would do the same in this policy. Here,
Sorry, I lowered my hand simply because it's already been covered organically. My name is on there as a holdover from years past when I was the assistant principal, but roles change. And again, it was covered. It needs to be amended every year.
great, yes, thank you. Carrie?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if you just put the phone number of the SU and they call and ask for that position, then you wouldn't have to change it every year in this policy.
Yeah, for the C14.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
What is the pleasure of the committee? Which way would you like to go?
I'd go with that general.
General, SU, phone number, call for specific names, that kind of thing. Okay. That sounds good. Do we want to, Andrea, if we're gonna have the policy come back here with a few changes, the worksheet and the listing of contact information, do we need a motion or we just put it on for a future agenda?
No, you can just put it on. I'll just say the committee agreed to make amendments and have it, re-presented at the next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, moving on, we are going to go to 5.5, which is C70, use of restraint and seclusion policy. It's a recommended policy from the BSBA, and you have in your packet the C34, which is our current policy that covers some of this. And if we were to go forward with this C70, C70 would replace C34. I'll just say, in looking over the packet for tonight, what I liked about C70 was that it's clear that the terms are defined in the state board rule, as opposed to in the current C34. It's a very long policy because we have all the definitions right in there, which I think does make it a little bit difficult to digest and might be overwhelming. Knowing that the terms are defined in the place where it states. So I did like that presentation.
And it refers to the fact that they're clearly defined in State Board Rule 4500 as well.
Right.
If you want to see, for example, what prone physical restraint is or mechanical restraint, any of those things, they're
Right.
easily accessible.
Right.
How accessible is getting a copy? Is that rule, state rule, going to be attached to the policy? It's not, yeah, but it's like, yeah, it's going to be online, but yeah, that's my question is,
Yeah, can it be linked?
can it be linked
to attach it to the procedure.
because
Yeah.
trying, so I know it's like just on my own. When I see something, see the regulation, and you get frustration because you're trying to hunt down that registration. If we're gonna have something in our policy, say these are what they're
Yeah,
defined,
a
we should-
link to the definitions,
Yeah.
I think would be the best way to do it.
We're not gonna have them in it. It should be linked and right there with it. I know it's long, but if the definitions in C34 are the exact definitions that are supposed to be, it makes it longer, but then it's all right there.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, because when you're looking at certain rules and regulations, the best definition is kind of very important.
Yeah. Oh,
It
yeah.
can
No,
be the
not
most
to,
important
not
section
to
'cause
diminish
it's-
their importance by any means. Section 3 also notes that superintendent or designee shall develop administrative procedures to go with this policy. So the definition could be linked there in the procedures, or it could be linked right on the policy.
Being that this was authorized in the district in 2019, were you given any rationale as to why this could be changed? Is it just because VSBA sold it?
Yeah, BSBA updated their policy.
Yeah, they updated it January 25th of this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, there was a lot of work that went into this, restraint and seclusion policy for the district.
Mhm.
A lot of thought that went into it before it was ratified.
I guess when I see that kind of thing, I assume it's updated to go along or be the most consistent with the current law.
Exactly.
But I don't know if that is the wrong
That,
assumption.
no, that, I think that's the right assumption. I think it also simplifies the language. I think if we get to John and others' points about, and Tom maybe said it too, about making sure that we have at least links to Rule 4500 with the definitions, I think that's key. But to keep that actual policy itself as clean as we can and consistent with the VSBA recommendation, I think that's the way to go.
And I don't know if it's historically, this is my timeline here, when we would have VSB changes, they usually be some indication that this is being changed because of some updates to the law. And I know there's different people come and go, but in the past, we would have that information, so we know this is why they're changing, because the law was changed. And if we're not getting that information, maybe that's something we should be getting, because I hate to assume certain things. That's historically in the past, there would be changes because it would be changes to law and to comply, but they would let us know that somehow it'd be in writing or something going with it, so we know. But if we're not getting indication as to why the change is happening.
I can ask and see if we can put it in our weekly update.
That'd be
I
great.
think the helpful, because instead of sitting there saying guessing, that's why it's changed.
Yeah.
Most times it was. That's why, I mean, historically, that's what's usually happened, but we don't know, so
Right.
I don't want to.
And on the VSBA policy manual website, what it says is just the date it was updated and then formerly C34. So that's all the information that's there.
Yeah, and see where it says legal reference on the last page, Vermont State Board of Education, 4500, 4510, 16 VSA 536. It doesn't indicate that those have been updated. And I keep pretty close track on what's going on with that, and I haven't seen any changes to 4500.
So
That's just a question that I have.
Yeah.
You know, why are we doing this? Is it like John Everest because it's there?
So can we ask the USDA?
yeah, I think we can.
Yeah, I do think that I thought we agreed maybe 2 meetings ago, we were going to try to stick to the VSBA recommended policies as closely as we could. But unless there were some real serious local concerns about it, just for consistency, with the understanding and assumption that these were legally vetted changes that were being recommended.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as we've brought different policies to the board, they have been clear of wanting our policies to be as closely aligned with the VSBA model policies as possible without a lot of veering off.
Except this was, I see differences, this was, they made a change to what we basically went off with, right? I mean, this policy that we have went off with VSB, VSB has changed it, they haven't told us why. And that's that just in my, whatever, I forget how many years been on, but I remember, Luke, am I wrong on that? That they would tell us that there have been changes and this is why it needs to be done, because we sort of sit there and know we have no choice but to do this with the law.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that has happened much since I've been doing this, other than like the bid law changed in the F20, so we had to change that.
The condom availability.
That law
Change
changed,
that, that
that's
became
right.
mandatory.
But other than that, I don't
There,
think-
annually, there are many laws that change that require policy change. I think you'll see coming up too.
Yeah, but we would just, they would usually be some sort of, just like a little thing, this law was updated, this changes, this is why take existing policy, and there's, you might not know on first glance what the real changes are. It's hard sometimes to compare. This is what this changed, and we say, okay, so we just update the policy to comport with a new amendment to the laws. Sometimes they're just small changes. not really major to the policy.
I understand
Yeah.
the definitions.
Yeah.
And they do track the old definitions. It's just shortened it up. But now this, as you pointed out first, now they're not there. That's a good thing that it's shorter. But
Yeah.
now that we're gonna have a link, so that's addressed. The other things, however, don't track the same. I mean, there's different wording, and I don't know
In
why.
the other,
The rest
later
of
numbered
this,
sections.
yeah, the rest of this policy, section 2. The wording isn't the same. There are some changes. But I would think the policy, a member, as a speech for myself, I'd like to know why.
Well, I mean, I can certainly inquire with my superintendent colleagues to see how they're handling these things. If they, in fact, as Andrew just pointed out, directly reach out to the VSBA to find these things out. It seems like if we have to seek that stuff out, that doesn't seem like an efficient way of doing business. You'd think that would be behind it, but
I can talk to the policy person and see what we can do to have it updated to the boards and at the weekly email.
okay. Thank you.
I think it would get rid of a lot of discussion.
But this one in particular, this can be a very difficult and
Sensitive.
yes, situation. And it behooves the district to have it really done right.
Timely, newsworthy. There's a lot of understandable controversy about restraint and seclusion, not obviously just in Vermont, but nationally. A lot of conversations having about it. I do agree with you, Alice. This is one to not take lightly. It's when you get totally right.
Section 4, implementation, is that? I hate to, but because I noticed in both, there's a section 4 in both says implementation. So it's that one that, if I was reading it, it's like, well, this is not really, could we really move that to procedure, or is it, should it stay in there? Well,
I laugh because we always come back.
I know, and then we didn't get rid of these, but it's like, then I was reading this, I'm like, this is getting maybe a little different.
And so this was one of the things that the board was pretty clear about saying, like, if it's in there as part of the policy from the VSBA, in order for us to pass this through for first and second readings, we want that to stay in there.
Really?
Yes.
So I thought that was a little
Right,
contrary to what,
Alice, on that?
Yeah.
It's in C-34 though, it's still in C-34.
well, I know it is, but it's a question we historically taken that, not have that out, not take that out of that because it's not policy, it's procedure. And I thought when Pietro sort of gave that advice that you need to have them separate.
Yeah. And go ahead.
The nice thing about this implementation is that it's not a step-by-step procedure.
Right, that's why I said this one may be a little different. I saw the title,
Yeah.
then I read it, and I was like, okay, this is a little different than what we've done before, but I just wanted to just,
No, I
yeah,
completely
it
agree.
didn't look like the typical procedure we see that we remove.
And I think part of what I heard from the board when we've taken some to them is the worry that there's so much work on procedures to be done that if we take out the implementation section, we might lose some things there that are important to keep in that might not be reflected in the procedures as time is being taken to update them, post them, write them, etc.
That defeats the purpose of policy for procedure.
Yeah.
That's when you get yourself in trouble the other way too, but, all right.
For the purposes of this policy,
That one's,
the
that's okay.
implementation feels okay.
Yes.
There's others that doesn't feel
Don't
great.
feel, yeah, no, when I read it, I was just like, yeah, this is, but I just wanted to point out because the title. Sorry, bring it to you.
Much like the next one we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
The next policy is.
So should we wait to get more information about this change before we do anything to bring it to the board so we're clear about why we want to do that?
Because we have a policy in place. It's not like we are running without anything. We have a policy in place and let's just make sure we do it right.
This is also a policy to consider.
Yep.
It's not required because Rule 4500 we are bound to
Yeah.
to
State
do
law.
that.
Correct,
It's state law.
correct.
So, you know, the fact that it's kind of like us having a special education policy. We're already bound by special education. So it's nice to have it, but we are required to do these things anyway.
We didn't
Yeah.
have it, it just the default is we have to follow the state law anyway.
Right.
It's just, it doesn't have to be followed because there's rules in place.
Yeah.
So taking a little extra time is not going to put anyone at any undue risk or anything like that.
So I wonder about, whereas the last one, we're gonna do some edits and have it come back to policy, maybe next month. This one, I'm wondering if we put it in the parking lot for now, while we, get more information and decide what's next. That make,
Yeah,
Oh,
something
nice.
we can bring back.
I don't really, I was gonna bring this up to the meeting. I don't understand what the parking lot is. I never understood that, it just appeared.
yeah,
And so I just makes me nervous they put the parking lot, sit there and stays there, because I figured this is one we easily have the answer, and next month we could take this up, just put it on old business. Is
Yeah.
parking lot old business, or is that different thing?
it is, yes, it's sort of like, hey, don't forget about these things. It's gonna be right at the end of every agenda. And so as you're setting next agendas, like I usually run through the parking lot from the previous, like, do we need to move anything up? But we could certainly, if we think we'll get that information back in time for next meeting, we could put it under old business and revisit it.
Assume they have that information. But, you know, it's either it is or isn't. And if it's not because of new laws, this is why we're recommending it. They should have that information.
All right. How does that sound to the committee about old business for next month?
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right, moving on, we are gonna go to 5.6, which is field trips D30. And in your packet, you have our current D30, which was adopted in 2019 and then put forth to the board for first and second readings and adopted again in 2020. And the VFBA removed this policy in July of 2020. I don't know why that is.
I would advocate we remove it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in line with VSBA, but the policy is one sentence. The rest of it is truly procedure.
It's a belief statement,
It-
basically. And I think that we have, well, now that we're hoping to get field trips back as part of school life again, we have the procedures themselves are fine. Procedures are fine and apropos to each of the schools, but I agree with you, Luke. I agree.
Just a comment on the procedures. There was a procedure in a previous field trip policy that stated that that overnight and out-of-state field trips should be brought to the attention of the board. And then that was removed and it became informing the board through the newsletters, through whatever. I was concerned with it then, and I continue to be concerned with it now, that there should be some clarity for overnight and out-of-state field trips, just so the board knows where the kids are going and where they're gonna be. That sometimes it can get buried in the newsletters, and if you have something that occurs, anything from, someone losing their book bag or losing their suitcase to something major, I continue to be very concerned that the board wouldn't know about it. And so if you're making those procedures, I just like to see that piece go back, if there's an official notification to the board that some group is going to Cincinnati, and that we know about it. Because I hate to find out the hard way.
Yeah, I was not involved in the creation of these.
Right.
But I think there's going to be, in fact, I know there's going to be a lot of discussion as we continue to hope to come out of COVID, right? I think we were starting to have this conversation last summer, and that did not work out well. But about the merit of field trips, and for those very few we've been able to pull off this year, they've been so valuable for kids. We want to espouse this policy statement here, right? We endorse the use as extension of classroom experiences. So the question is, how much for the big trips, like wrestlers are going out of state for a big tournament, for example, and how do we notify? How is the board notified about that? So,
although it is I think the information is good, but it is purely informational.
And that's
it's not that the board would do anything to keep the kids safe or to follow up if there was a problem or do any of the work that the teachers or the administrators would do who were involved.
Right. It's not, I think it's more the element of surprise that if something comes up after the fact because something that occurred between students on the field trip or something that an accident of any sort or anything like that, or you lose somebody in the Cincinnati airport. They haven't been to Cincinnati. I don't think you can lose anybody in the airport. But I mean, that's the kind of thing. And so if the board knows about that up front, then they're just aware about it. So it's not the element of surprise when they come back, and say, well, this happened and that happened. Or you have a parent who brings something to your attention and say, oh, I didn't even know they were gone. That kind of thing. So in your contemplation of that, that maybe there just might be a more emphasis on a formal notification to the board that somebody's moving either overnight or out of state.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
I know, well, maybe I'm going to make a statement, and I understand why we want to remove the policy because it's primarily implementation, but I think it is an important policy in that the board or the district is endorsing the use of field trips as extensions of classroom experiences. We don't really want to encourage field trips that are just to Six Flags, just to go to Six Flags. You know what I mean? Like, I think the whole idea of there's obviously value in going to Six Flags, having fun, being with your classmates and all of that. But I also think, we're also in the business of educating students. So we're trying to promote experiences that are going to be educational in nature, some way, shape, or form. So I understand what you're saying. I think by completely removing this, it doesn't just obviously let you off the hook, but in some ways it lets you off the hook. And I disagree with that myself. I think that we should have an expectation. If you're going to be spending district money, you're going to be spending the hard-earned money of the students who raise it, and it should be educational. That's my opinion.
I'm wondering if this can be addressed, Sonia, what you're bringing up in our more along the lines of our strategic plan in terms of experiences for kids and not necessarily policy. And I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. Because I fully understand what you're saying.
I mean, don't get me wrong. My kids went on every single field trip there was, whether it was to Shelburne Museum or to Whalesdale, which I don't think there was a single speck of educational experience at Whalesdale when they went, and they had a blast even still. But I do think that
there's social emotional benefits to those trips for sure.
Absolutely, but I also think that there's social emotional benefits to going to Shelburne Museum too.
Indeed.
I mean, in this implementation section, it says the report that has to be put forth to approve the trip. The report must state specific reference to the curriculum, learning outcomes, and source of payment, blah, blah, blah. But it does go into how that supports the policy about the learning outcomes and the curriculum.
And I'm not sure how the teachers, I mean, this happened year after year after year, that, 7th grade went here and 8th grade went here, and that's just what they did. And I don't think, I'm not sure how we got around the educational, aspect of it.
Well-
How they basically sold that as a, educational experience.
I mean, I'm thinking about the line, endorse the use of field trips as extensions of classroom experiences in our strategic plan 3C under curriculum and career pathways, multiple modes of instruction to reach all levels of students. If you look at student wellness, student engagement, support diverse needs, social emotional learning, really the field trips could go into all kinds of this stuff. Multi-tiered systems of support under student engagement, interdisciplinary unit. It's just, I guess that's, I initially, when you brought that up, I'm like, right. And then I started to think about just how we can integrate this stuff into our strategic plan and thus be making it more of a living document, which is what our goal is with that document, and start talking about it through that lens as opposed to policy. Might be a more healthy approach for our district for something like this anyway. I'm thinking out loud here, but I'm trying to really get to a point where we can be referring to that strategic plan in a lot of our discussion, and as a habit, and it's still fairly new to us. So I'm just trying to think of inroads for that. This could be one.
Carrie, go ahead.
To directly reflect it, why can't it just be in the procedure? Just it sounds like the procedure is a form, and if the form says, how does this relate to the academics of the class that's traveling, and if they don't have a way that it's relevant to their class academics, then it's blank, and that's obvious sign that there's an issue.
So I would argue, Carrie, that the issue with that for me is that the administration develops the procedures. And if at some point they're like, oh, no one ever answers this, so we're just going to get rid of it, then that kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think, yes, we could include it, but this is what the board does, is we create policy. So, is it important enough that it should continue to remain a policy, even if it's just one sentence? I don't.
Right. If in the form, if it said this is it's required to complete or something of that nature, I think that would be a red flag if it was removed, if it said next to it was required.
Do we have field trip procedures now in place? And are those in the individual handbooks? Is that where those would be?
Spalding has four levels of forms. So one is just a local field trip request form. And all of our forms do identify what standards are being addressed by this field trip. But there's a local one. There's an in-state, not local, out of state, and overnight. So I think there's 4 levels of form that are required, and they do all have what standard is going, or standards will be addressed by this trip. And that's our procedure. And it does outline, there's an attached form which says, like, you have to have parental permission, nurse needs to be notified with all of the students so they can check for any medical plans or medication issues. Transportation.
Pretty tight.
It's a significant process.
But wouldn't it be great to have our faculty staff refer to that strategic plan for the goals too? I think that could be really helpful to get them thinking along the lines of it. Pierre?
So a quick search of our Berry City Parent Handbook. Field trips are defined as being educational opportunities. So we have that part of the intention pretty clearly laid out for parents right there. And in practice, the supervising faculty do have to make the case for educational. And I mean beyond we're taking a spirometer onto a roller coaster. Can we go to Six Flags? There has to be some kind of identified team building activity, outdoor education activity. They have to have a defense for what they're doing.
Seems like a different era, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, I hope we can get back to getting kids having these experiences ASAP.
Mhm.
He's filled out a field trip form for my son, so.
Congrats,
They're going
that's
to New Hampshire, yeah. He's excited.
I bet.
What are they going to do?
We're going to polar caves.
One of my
Out by
favorite
Lincoln.
Hokie, New
Woodstock.
Hampshire
Woodstock,
sites.
yeah. We drove by it a million times, and so now he's actually
It's
going to
awesome.
go this class.
Polar caves, I drive by it every time I go to get them.
Yeah.
The orange crush and the lemon squeeze. Tell them about it. You and I would struggle. It's great though. They love it.
Yes.
It's a lot of team building, problem solving
Yeah.
stuff. It's awesome.
So what is the pleasure of the committee in terms of what to do and bringing this to the board? Do we want to rescind it? Do we want to keep it? Is there more conversation to be had or work to be done here?
There's two questions. A, do we keep it? B, if we do keep it, get rid of implementation, right? Because implementation is policy. I mean, procedure.
Mhm.
Clearly, this one.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, I guess for me, knowing that the schools have their handbooks and that there are questions asked and information gathered about all of this procedural stuff, I think I would be okay with recommending to the board to rescind it, but I don't know what other people think.
We rescind it. Because there's no policy doesn't mean it can't be procedure.
Right.
That's the one question.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think it makes. I go.
And make a motion.
Make a motion.
What's your motion?
Yeah, rescind B30.
To recommend to the board
Yeah.
to rescind B30. Okay, and a second?
I'll say.
Second from Alice. All in favor, signify with a thumbs up or an eye. All right, we're unanimous here, and Tim and Giuliano,
Aye.
thank you.
Aye.
Okay, so Tim, did you want to say something? All right.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Oh,
Recommend-
same thunderstorm.
Yeah, I had some weather-related stuff happen here.
Yeah, my phone's been popping like crazy, but
So hopefully we won't lose everybody. Recommend to the board, send this to the board with a recommendation from the committee to rescind. Okay, our next item is 5.7, which is policy F27, communicable disease mitigation measures for students and staff. This is a new policy from the VSBA that replaces F33. In your packet, you have the new policy of F27, as well as the F33 from that was adopted by the BUUSD in 2019, and that one is called the HIV policy. Yeah.
could folks just mute if you are not speaking? I think Andy and Tim, if you guys could do that, that'd be helpful.
I've been muted.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
What I saw from reviewing these two policies is basically HIV is included in the F27, whereas the F33 is strictly about HIV. So it's more comprehensive and includes other things, other communicable diseases to be concerned about and how to manage in school.
If I could say, the HIV policy seems to deal, I'd say 75% of it is about privacy, pride, actually. It's not something that can be transmitted, HIV, et cetera, et cetera. And the police policy has a different, bent.
Mhm.
And there's lists in there that I don't know where they came. For example, the list in the heading says implement municipal disease mitigation measures, including but not limited to, and then there's a list.
Mhm.
Vaccination of school staff. Okay, I don't know where that came from. Whether that is something, is the BSBA saying that they're endorsing vaccination, and why? In the history of man, this is pretty new. We're requiring that. I don't know where that comes. Mask wearing, yeah, same points. Social distancing, same points. Screening, I don't know if there's supposed to be some punctuation between screening and testing. And those are two different things, or one thing, screening and testing. Quarantine/isolation. Isolation. Improved ventilation. That list, I don't know where that comes from, and whether there's a doctor on the BSBA that has done some research and has an opinion. These things are not settled, I don't think, and they're still controversial. The policy, including but not limited to, and I don't know what else would go in that list. And then the list of communicable diseases. I looked, maybe I'm just a little slow. I don't know where that list came from. I mean, I did the, I looked at the statute, or, tell me where, if anybody knows where it came from. I don't know where.
It doesn't appear to be definitive. It shall include but not be limited to.
Right.
And I see on the copy, is it here? Yeah, so on the very back page of that one, it does list the statute for under communicable diseases.
Oh, yeah, I looked at that.
18 VSO.
That is provided.
Okay.
It provides.
I mean, the other thing that I was struck by in terms of the things that are being updated and included is this version, this policy came out March 11th of 2022. So one can assume that's heavily influenced by our experiences of the past 2 years. Yeah, right.
Still not settled, not controversial. And
I agree with that. I am concerned that it says within that first paragraph that shall, right? So it's the policy to implement these measures, including the vaccination, screening. That's saying that we will do those things and maybe others as well. But is that saying that that's required or that it's offering? We've offered screenings, but we haven't required screenings. So I'm concerned. Also, most of these are airborne, and AIDS and HIV are not airborne remediation. I don't believe there's a vaccination for that. So I'm concerned that this has all been lumped together, and I agree with you that not knowing the origin or who was involved in designing this feels a little bit. It is a to be considered. It's a 33 level, so it's not something that is required right now or even recommended. Actually, that's.
I would argue as well that the hard part with this is there are no requirement at the state level to do any of this stuff. So that was kind of one of the biggest challenges for schools throughout this past year plus, was that it was, well, it's what the community wants to do. You know, it's very, very challenging. So, I mean, I think this is to be, I mean, some of this language to be considered, but there are a lot of questions for sure, especially in terms of enforceability.
And there also are some cost implications in this as well. When we talk about improved ventilation, providing hygiene supplies,
I mean, a lot of
and
that
a
stuff.
policy, if you're policy shouldn't impact budget in a significant way. And those could impact budget.
I'm still concerned about kids wearing masks. Whether that was ever necessary, and the downsides, I've got grandkids that have developmental issues in another state. And, you know, 2 or 3-year-old kids seeing everybody wearing a mask, and then the kids wearing a mask in schools, I think that's a problem. I don't think that's a done deal that was the right thing to do. And you put it in policy, that's a good idea.
Can I ask a question? Is there a current vaccination requirement for students to attend school?
Not for COVID, but for other
For
things.
some of these other things that are
For
listed?
many, if not most, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the policy here doesn't actually mention vaccination for children. It says vaccination for children. The mask wearing doesn't specify.
Well, it says students and staff.
Yeah, I thought that
Yeah,
was
it's
interesting,
for
like, at the
Out
top,
the whole
the
thing.
title.
Yeah, but
It's the name of the policy, yes. It
Oh,
may be
right,
for
but then
student staff.
then the list says vaccination of school staff. Mask wearing,
Yep.
it
without
says
mentioning.
including but not
Yeah.
limited to vaccination of school staff, mask wearing. The title says one thing, but it says
Right.
the implications. I mean, this is, to me, this is. When we said that we really want to stick to VSBA, in my mind, that's a good idea, but my mind, I guess I was thinking of prior times where we get better information from VSBA. Well, this is twice tonight. I mean, it's like, why?
Mhm.
And it used to be some sort of explanation given to us as to why, because otherwise we're either sending it to our lawyer, spending a lot of money, or sending it back and like, you know.
And everybody's doing the same thing. Yeah.
Again, I don't think I'm too far off the loop, but right? I mean, my memory's correct. I'm old. Is that we used to get better explanations. So we would go into this, we kind of know. We understand this is not mandatory. This is just, you know, something like recommended, but it's got to be a reason why.
And you're right, it is recommended
It
to be
is,
updated.
yes.
It's a
Yeah.
27,
Yes.
not a 30.
It is
Yeah,
recommended.
it's
yeah,
recommended.
say that.
It's recommended, but
But
we
not
used to get some sort of just sending it this stuff and saying here without why.
Well,
This is, you
And it
know,
also sounds to me, just listening here, this group is certainly not ready to move forward with this. So it sounds like what we've got to do is just get more information.
yes, fully.
I mean, I'm all for any mitigation efforts we do to keep kids safe, but I acknowledge there are some questions with
And do
this.
you have to put normal course of procedure into policy? I mean, we scrub the buildings, you know, that's what I kind of thought of as I read this and saying, this is just taking what happens,
This is too broad.
almost routinely.
I think it takes what happened the last 2 years. And, you know, when a fish is in water, it doesn't know it's in the water. Yeah, this is the environment. This is the conventional wisdom. It's just gonna put in the problem. The mask again, we're gonna do vaccination. You know, the first time ever, we said everybody's gotta get a vaccination.
Well, vaccinations are not necessarily bad because polio, you know, we don't want polio. There's track record.
I think the question.
And-
Not on certain
vac. Say
Not on every vaccination, I disagree. But on this, we don't know yet. I agree with that, but like, you know, we have, no one wants polio back.
And certain
some reasons,
vaccinations
but-
are required for
Yeah,
kids.
they are.
Yeah, they are
So
required,
Unless
so
you had an exemption.
I don't have a
for some
problem with
reason,
that.
that's
This is
required.
too soon, too early, doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
It's poorly written, I think. So I don't know. I'd say we,
So
We need more info.
yeah,
Yeah,
move
I
on.
will say one thing, though, that I liked about it was the pieces around comprehensive health education.
Yep.
That were more specific, and that's not outlined in anything related to the HIV policy. So, you know, when things come up around our world becoming more complicated for kids in a lot of different ways, including technology and things they're exposed to that can impact their health. I liked that part of the policy, that part of policy would be comprehensive health education around these topics. So I did like that part as the parent of 2 teens.
Depends what they're instructing.
But then,
Oh, I have, I'm not in disagreement that parents shouldn't know of any parts of the curriculum that they'd like to find that information about. But some kids are getting some of that information at home that they need to make healthy, informed choices as they're moving into teen years, and some people don't.
Juliana, you had your hand up, sir.
Yeah, kind of going back to simpler times with bloodborne pathogens. Were there trainings and procedures in place to take care of that at the very least?
There still are.
Yeah.
Okay, because I remember being at a basketball game where someone was injured and they just wiped it up. And they were all done with it, and the game continued. So I was a little concerned about that.
I shouldn't.
Yes, for sure, that would be concerning, yes. So it sounds like we are not going to move forward with any action on this one for the time being. Another case of getting more information, and actually this one probably we have more questions than we've had about any others.
I'd be surprised if anybody's just running with this one.
Yeah.
Honestly, regardless of how you feel about this stuff,
Yeah.
I think there's just
Yeah.
too many holes, and just very interesting.
I noticed Andrea put a note in the chat. She had to log off because of lightning, and her phone line sometimes gets struck by lightning, I guess. So just to know she's not on anymore.
Okay, thank you.
But is this one that whether we would put it back in the parking lot or just make a note on the policy index and leave it there for now?
I think that's the way to go.
Is just make a note
Yeah.
that at this time we're not recommending
Yeah.
moving forward, and not enough information about
Right.
the rationale or this information in the policy.
Next time, give us some explanation.
Uh-huh. And I guess the question would be, and I don't know who would even be the right person at the VSBA to reach out to, but like, how would we like to receive that information? Like, would they put it out in a monthly newsletter? Would it go through superintendents? Would it be posted? I don't think Karen's still there. Would it be posted like on the policy manual website? Like they have the section of like new policies recently changed, policies removed recently. Would there be a link that you click on of like, why, give me more information about like why this was changed, why this was
how does
removed?
this come to us? Does this come just as an email that here's a suggested recommended policy, or how do we get this?
We get it from the BSBA site.
Okay,
So their
so we
site,
sought this out?
we review
Policy
the
index.
BSBA
Yeah.
policy. And when we see a new one that comes up,
Okay,
we bring it, we download it.
okay.
And then
So,
bring it
so
forward.
before we download it, then can we just ask, or as we download, we say why? That's the,
Who we though? What do you mean?
who accepts this? How does this get into our packet?
So it gets into our packet by the policy index where it says like, this is new, this is changed, this is what have you. And then I think when the agenda is being made, the questions come to say, do you want to add this to the agenda? This is a new policy, this has been changed. And generally we try to stay current as things are happening. And so I say,
So
yes.
maybe
let's
it's
put
in
that.
that practice that if a new one pops up, there has to be an automatic question back to the VSBA that says, why?
And I
Or
guess
they
that's my
should-
question is, who does that work? Because it's usually Tina making the agenda, so that won't
Right.
really be Tina's job, right?
No.
And then, like, is that Chris's job?
Did
Is that
Andrea,
my
I thought
job?
Andrea, I can't see what's the chat. I thought she wrote something about that in the chat.
Well, she wrote that John Pandolfo used to actually reach out. My question is, we shouldn't be having to fish for this stuff. It should be
And that's
pretty
what-
clear.
That's what Carrie was gonna be checking.
Yeah.
in With the folks
Yeah.
at VSBA, can we just add that when we do the update?
Because if every superintendent or every policy chair in the state is doing this, that's just wildly
That's waste of time.
inefficient, waste of time. All that
And
stuff.
it's like the one-liner on that chart that says,
Yeah,
here's this and then
updated or new.
updated
or- yes.
because.
When the legislature creates new law, normally they'll give a purpose, the reason. Preamble. Why they don't do that, but. it's just why they don't.
So it could come, so it could, actually reflect back to the SBA that they on their chart could just put the reason for it.
So we're spending a lot of time discussing about this.
Yeah.
We haven't had to in the past. Now we're just eating up a lot of
Yeah.
talking in circles.
That would be
Yep,
the
agreed.
first
They used to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Well,
on
we
the-
used to, I wasn't sure. I just know when we got the policy meeting, there was an explanation. I didn't know how, but VSBA, I assume we paid VSBA, right? I mean, for,
Yeah, so
So-
John would reach out when it was on the agenda. Why is this being updated?
Mm.
They'd say because, you know.
They should be
it's been
doing
reflected
that.
By law.
That's what I mean by the fishing.
yeah, they
It's
should be
just-
doing that.
Yeah.
If they want us to do these policies, we have to do these, or we should do these. Well, just tell us why, so we have an understanding, because like, this law changed, it changed, this amendment, so you gotta change
Yeah,
this
this
line.
word or this tweet or whatever.
Instead of us,
Having the fish.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I see William has a hand raised.
So, do you only look at policies that are brought forward by the VSBA? Or do you come up with your own policies at times when you feel that something is necessary?
I think both are possible. Yep.
Yeah.
If there's an issue that's not addressed that needs a policy, that can happen.
I'm on the VSBA site now, looking at all, trying to find if there's like a source for this. I don't see it.
So we certainly tend to review the VSBA policy index and see what's been updated, what's been rescinded, what's been added, those kinds of things. But if there is an issue that we're aware of, and that we have a handful of policies that intra-district transfer, by the way, I think is unique to us. I don't believe that that's on the VSBA model policy.
Right.
It might be,
I don't
but
know.
there are a handful that are unique to us that are not part of their other things. And sometimes we're ahead of the curve. You know, we had the electronic surveillance policy long before they had their video camera recording policy. So we do, as we see the need, create policy. It's just not, that's the exception.
First, will you reach out to the USDA or is it-
I'm gonna reach out to my superintendent colleagues first, not reinvent the wheel, and just see when they have the stuff come up at the policy level for them. Because I'm like, for example, this F-27 is going to be a head scratcher for a lot of people, no doubt. So
Right, but we could also just go straight to the source and say what.
yeah.
I mean, you can ask your superintendent colleagues, but they may just scratch their head as much as we have.
Or they may have already got the answer, I guess is what I'm thinking. But yeah, I can just reach out.
I feel like, well, if you want me to reach out on behalf of the board, I can do that. If you want to do it as policy chair, then you can do that. It's okay to do that. You can do that.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't reached out to them as of yet. I don't know who would be the person that I would do that
I'd probably
to.
Sue Zagowski.
Yeah.
I would start with Sue Zagowski because she's the executive director, and Carrie Mann, and just say, Carrie spoke about this, and then if it's supposed to go to Sandra Cameron, it'll go to Sandra Cameron. If
Yeah.
it's supposed to go to someone else, so. But if,
who's ever writing it? Who writes these? I
well,
mean, that's the person
Well, some of them, Pietro.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's also our lawyer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm. But I
And
think they're,
Sandra is the kind of,
Well, I'm saying, whoever's putting this together, this person probably is gonna be right in the,
they probably don't understand what's happening at our level.
Yeah.
You know, like they're creating this policy and it's great and we appreciate that.
Yeah.
But they don't understand what's happening when we sit down to discuss it. So maybe we can just enlighten them.
Okay.
I would think they would because they have other school board members on their board, but maybe because they're already in the know, they don't have questions.
We have questions.
Yeah.
True.
All right. Anybody have a hand raised? No. All right, we're gonna move on to item 6, old business. 6.1 is the procedure development update.
so since the last meeting, I believe that our committee met one time, to just look at the model procedures. The VSBA had put out, I think there was 4, maybe 5, that frankly were all in a different state of format, and some of them were rather unimpressive. I know that's going to go on the record, but that's okay.
There are model procedures from,
They have some model procedures. Yeah. It's a new thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
okay.
And that's beyond like HHB C10 has the C10 procedures, like it's right there.
Yeah.
Title IX has Title IX procedures. Those are required because they're law, as they're written, they're law. But they have some model procedures like attendance, for example. They have model procedures for attendance. It's worse than this last policy we just talked about that we don't want to touch.
Mhm.
So,
And they're models for people maybe who are starting from scratch to work from, I would assume. Mhm.
so
Call it what you
I'm
will.
trying not to be too critical, but it was really difficult for us to use as a model.
Mhm.
So we are going to be tackling attendance as the first, because in theory, those procedures should be very similar.
Mhm.
So that's kind
Between
of
all the schools.
between all of
Yeah,
the schools,
okay.
right? So that's the first one that we're going to tackle, and then we are going to be calibrating, making sure that we're on the same page, and that will be upcoming. We're meeting every other Wednesday, so our next one would be, I believe, next Wednesday. But that's the update for that group.
Great, thank you. Is this an item that it would be worthwhile to have as a standing item on this
Yeah.
Committee? Yeah, so we'll do it monthly.
Just quick updates on the work of the group, because they're going to be cranking a lot of this stuff. There's a rep from each school
Okay.
that participates.
it's fair to say that the model policy procedures that they're doing is so basic because a lot of maybe, like, I noticed I brought up a couple meetings ago, some of area schools, when I was looking at their policy procedures, they were light years behind what we've done. So I'm assuming a lot of school districts are like way behind us.
Yeah.
What we're doing.
It's true.
Mhm, mhm.
Like I said, my little basic research looking at other ones, like, wow, they don't have anything compared to us.
We really like the format of one of the procedures, so I think we're going to implement that format for all of the procedures, so that you're looking at consistent, uniform sheets when you flip through. But
And great for ease for the committee too, just like keep using the same form, not well formatted, etc. Okay, thank you. Any other comments on that item? All right, 6.2 policy editing update. We're looking at that.
Yeah, I think we made some progress in
okay.
terms of certainly Tina has seemingly got a much better system in place to get these things cleaned up and edited properly. And I think we're took the information from the last meeting. I think we've got them ready to roll now.
Okay, so it had come up around, would they be edited live here in the meeting, or would you take the edits back to her? And is
We're
that-
taking the
that's
edits
what you're
back to
gonna
her.
Do that.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay. Any questions, anybody about that? All right, thank you. Next is item 7, other business. Does anyone have any other business? Okay, hearing none. Item 8 is items for future agenda. So, we said that we're gonna bring 5.4, the ADA policy back for future agenda, right? You can make better notes on this section of the agenda as we go through the meeting. And then what was the other one? The C, was it the C70 or the field trips?
Field trips we were going to remove.
Yeah.
It was the use of restraint and seclusion.
Okay. Yeah, oh yeah, sorry, C70. Okay, so C70 will go on future agenda for next month, and C14. And we will keep the procedure development update also under old business. So C14 and C70 will be old business since we have already addressed them. And procedure development. Should we put an item that's something about an update from the VSBA about what we find out about?
Whoever gets that report, could they report back to us as to the question of why and how they're going to remedy that?
Yeah, so we would call that update from VSBA on policy changes. Okay, any other agenda items for next time? Do we want to look in the parking lot?
Yeah, that's what I was
See if we
gonna
want to bring up any of
ask,
those.
because I'm just looking at this parking lot, and the first one, it says it's required. And it's changed 1422, so I assume that's something we need to take up.
Just came through.
Yeah, and then,
The A policies,
yeah, the,
A30 and A31.
right, so I was looking, considering they're just changed. And then there's one other I saw, where to go, require the Title I, Part A, parent family engagement required, VSBA change 9/24/21. I don't remember.
And I would recommend that the anti-racism policy that's been in the parking lot, that we just take that off now until we can do whatever work needs to happen with that. That was one that our counsel, Pietro Lund, strongly advised we not take on. It's not to disrespect any of the work that was done last spring, but I think it would be, I don't even think we should have that on the parking lot until those conversations happen again.
I'm just going to look back in the policy index and see how it's listed now. It just says new local policy has been vetted, parking lot TBD. So we could update that too.
Yeah, I mean, it was vetted, but in
Yeah.
vetting recommended we not do it.
So we could say there's no action at this time or something like that on that one.
Just get rid of it, yeah. I'll do. So taking that out of the parking lot, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're talking about doing the first 3 of the parking lot. So like I said, the last one, Title I, Part A, says it's required. So I think that needs to be one way or the other. I just don't remember that one off the top of my head.
I'll look and see if we have a current E1 right now. We do have an E1, and it's from 2019, so May and June of 2019.
And that may be because there were changes with the plan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we could go ahead and perhaps for the next agenda, put E1 and B1, the two required, and then also A30 and A31. How does that sound to people? Just those four as the new business for the next meeting. Tim and Juliana, does that sound okay to you?
Yep.
All right.
The visits.
Fine to me.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
The visits policy is going to take some time for discussion. Whenever we get to that one,
Okay.
we're not going to want to pack that one in.
The E32. Okay, so maybe we would do that in August or September. Well, right. Okay.
And Bill has a.
Yeah, William, go ahead.
I asked this at the last board meeting. Is there a policy on student walkouts? And if not, should there be?
There's not a policy per se at all.
They're not sanctioned, so we wouldn't have a policy on them because they're not something that we're approving or orchestrating or designing.
It's leaving school early.
Are parents notified if a student takes part in a walkout? Are there any ramifications?
This is kind of beyond what we're.
It is. It is.
We're beyond the agenda. It's not warned or.
Yeah, right. This is a topic that wasn't.
Fair enough. Yep.
But William, I can talk to Mrs. Waterhouse and Mr. Ather about this, and we can reach out to you specifically with this.
Great. Any other items for future agenda? Sounds pretty good for June. Okay, our next meeting is June 20th at 6 p.m. I will either be attending remotely or possibly won't be able to attend. I'm going to be campaigning in Danville, but they have Wi-Fi and it's a camper, so maybe I can attend.
That would be a blast.
I'm gonna see what I can do.
I too may have challenges on the 20th, not for anything that fun, but just as an FYI. That's the Monday following. Yeah.
Following the last day of
Yeah.
school. Yes. Yeah. I mean, does that work for other people? I mean,
We move it up the week before, or is that too challenging because that's the end of school for you guys?
That would be.
Yeah, that'd be rough.
There's a facilities meeting on the 13th. Yeah. Sorry about the interlude there, everybody. We lost you for a moment, but we're back. And it's still being recorded. So.
Okay, so June.
Just given the end of June is a truly extraordinary time.
Yeah.
It may make sense to hold off until July or August.
I was going to say, so the board has also discussed that it's a possibility of not having meetings in July just because of people's schedules. So that would mean possibly us reconvening in August.
Of course, the end of August is also not a great walk in the park either, but we'll figure that out.
But at least it's,
yes, at least we're back. We're back. Yes.
We educators are around.
Yeah, we're around. True. We are. That is exactly right.
Yep. Yep.
Because is there anything pressing that we would consider to be pressing coming up to the June meeting?
I don't think so.
If there's anything that we have to have in our packet beginning July 1st, or in our policies for July 1st, if there isn't anything that possibly could.
What do people think about that? Possibly reconvening in August. Giuliano and Tim,
That's fine.
okay?
That's
Yep.
fine.
Okay. John?
Yes,
Sounds okay to you? Yeah, Alice is good?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, so we will, reconvene on, August 15th will be the next meeting, actually, so that is, a change for that packet and that agenda that we just talked about, we'll do that in August. Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thanks, Tim, with the first and Alice with the second, and we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.